Hello, listeners, to Allan Feldman's Infinite Potential podcast. Today I have with me Laura Martino, representing three organizations: the Emergence Music Group, ET Studio Productions, and ET Labs. She is the songwriter, vocal coach, and owner of those three businesses. And we're going to be talking a little bit about her childhood, what inspired her to go into this industry, um, what her natural creativity is, and then her career progression, what she's done in the past, how she's came to where she is now, and then lessons we can learn in her industry and the services she offers. So, Laura, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you so much for having me, Alan.
Of course. Okay, so first question. Um, what were your childhood hobbies and interests, and what was your, I guess, creative outlet as a kid?
I've had many hobbies as a child, but the one that stuck out the most was singing and performing. I had no issues performing in front of crowds ever. I remember, my earliest memory. Well, first of all, I guess I can go back to my early. I was really singing with my dad. My dad was a singer. He never really did it professionally, but he had a doo-wop group, and him and I would just walk around the house and sing oldies and Sinatra and classic doo-wop songs, and that was kind of my inspiration. And then when I was in elementary school, as soon as I was able to speak, I would raise my hand and beg the teacher to let me get up and sing in front of the class. And I wasn't very good. Like, I was like moving my head a lot, and the kids were like, "Oh, here's Laura. Here's this Laura Monaco again. Here she goes getting up on the stage." So, that was always something that I was never afraid of. I feel like from a very young age, I just felt like I belonged on stage, and I had something to say, and I wanted people to hear what I had to say, whether they wanted to hear it or not. Um, I tried other things. My parents put me in ice skating and cheerleading, and none of that stuff stuck. It was always the creative world. I am not a dancer. They did put me in dance, and that did not work out very well. I have a lot of vocal rhythm, but not not much, physical dancing rhythm. So I don't claim to be a dancer at all. But mostly, vocal, performing, songwriting. I would love writing poetry. I had poetry books, diary books that I would write into all the time. I really loved that. I did have a poem published. I don't remember the name of the place that it was published. I'd have to get back to you on that. But I had a poem that I wrote. I think I was like maybe in the fifth or the sixth grade. So writing was
Wow,
always something that I was good at and I really loved. And then I started my journey from there.
amazing. How early did you start writing again?
Writing never stopped. Like I said, that like I was like that girl that always wrote in my diary. So that I mean, to this day I still write in the diary. Not all the time, obviously not as much as I used to, but writing is definitely a huge outlet for me. That's it. That's really my release, honestly. But I started writing. I started writing young. Like, English was always my best subject. That was always
Mm,
my favorite subject in school. I didn't particularly love the books that they asked us to read, and I wouldn't even say that I was really an avid reader so much. I just really loved to write. I liked the writing aspect more than I liked the reading aspect of it. Later on in life, when I got into high school and then, through college years, now I love reading. Reading is like my favorite thing. I want to open up a library like Beauty and the Beast with the
mm,
ladder. I would love to have that one day. So I think, I think it kind of just evolved. It was something that was always there. And I started realizing all the different things I can do with writing, and because I was a singer, I said, "Oh, cool, I can write what I want to say and I can sing about it. That's fun."
mhm. Absolutely. So I want to go to a recent post that I saw. I think it was probably two or three posts back. Um, as far as right now, it's August 31st. You mentioned in the post that you had anxiety growing up. So I want to touch on that. Was writing kind of an outlet for you to be able to express your thoughts, maybe? Did songwriting provide that also?
That's a great question, and I'm really glad that you brought that up. That was the first time that I kind of came outright as a business owner and a business leader with a post like that. I felt compelled, especially now during the COVID-19 crisis and so many people, out of jobs and just a lot of sadness and fear kind of surrounding us. I've been finding my, myself more in tune to that than ever and more in tune to my feelings. And I think because I'm a natural empath and I have this empathic personality, I think that it's a blessing and a curse. I think that it's a blessing because it's the reason why I am where I am today, and I think
Yeah.
it's how I'm able to pull out emotions from artists and have develop that connection with them and help them, learn how to express themselves freely. It's a curse because it's very hard to turn off. And when the entire world is feeling a certain way, and you kind of have that, it kind of sticks to me. So music has always been the outlet for me. And as I got older, I started to become more involved with prayer and meditating and yoga. And those things have definitely helped. Once I became a mom,
Hmm.
my son is 2.5. He's gonna be 2.5. I found out before that I was gonna have trouble getting pregnant naturally, and it was a whole process. And for me as a woman, it definitely knocked down my self-esteem. It made me feel like, well, what do you mean I'm not able to get pregnant on my own? That's what I'm supposed to do. I'm a female. This is why I'm here. What do you mean? And my dreams were always to be a mom and have a successful career and be able to set out and live my mission in this world. And all those things, I think that kind of, I had a little bit of a challenging childhood growing up. And I grew up in the Bronx. I didn't grow up in Staten Island. And I had some things growing up that definitely tried to knock me down and keep me there. And I think the reason why I felt compelled to do this post
Hmm.
is because I want everyone to know that even though there's the successes and there's all these, statements and things to be proud of. And yes, I really do. If I think about it, I really have everything that I've dreamed of. And I'm super grateful for the life that I have and the family that I have and the family I've built in both career and personal life. But I think that above anything else, togetherness is what really helps set you apart and what really helps ease the anxiety. So
Yeah.
that's why I posted what I posted, because although I have music and although that is an outlet for me, a big thing that helps me heal is healing others. So by healing others, I heal myself. And I felt like for the past 4 months, I haven't really been able to do that to the fullest of my capacity. So my anxiety has been much higher recently. That on top of having a toddler that hates to sleep and then running 3 businesses, it definitely catches up on you and exposes a lot of vulnerabilities that become harder and harder to kind of hide. And as a songwriter and a musician, I tend to wear my heart on my sleeves. And, it's hard for me to, hide what I'm feeling. So I figured, let me be transparent. Let me just kind of say it like it is. I feel like the world needs to hear this right now for whatever reason. And hopefully others can relate and we can kind of have that connection again.
I really appreciate you being vulnerable right now in the post to even say that. Because that, as you mentioned, with the factor of togetherness and relatability that you now have with your audience is completely different. I completely understand about being an empath because I'm one myself. And I would even say, you mentioned before that it's almost impossible to turn it off. I would even go to say you can't turn it off. It's just like it's always
It's
there.
who you are, right?
Yeah. Um, but yeah, also a really good mentions you mentioned is that you said you realized that you had to that helping others would ultimately help yourself, which I think is especially true for empaths um, because that is our natural gift, right? Like as an empath, if we're not healing others, we're going to hang on to that guilt and shame of not doing so when we know we can. Um, and so it's a really good place to be when you can do that. And I'm glad to see that you have. It's amazing.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that. Well, from one empath to another, it's definitely challenging, for sure. Wait
Yeah,
until you get
definitely.
older. Wait until you get older. You have a family. You'll see.
I'm sure of it. I am sure of it.
Yeah, it's
Um,
beautiful. It's a gift, but it's definitely comes with many challenges that you have to try to navigate, right? So yeah, I mean, you can't turn it off, but you definitely can find ways to manage it, right? So
yeah,
music and meditation and yoga and prayer has been my way to manage it. But it gets out of hand sometimes, especially when it's so much. There's so much noise right now going on in the world that it's like there's almost like there's voices in your head. I know that sounds crazy and creepy, but it's true.
yeah, totally. So let's go next into college. What did you decide to pursue in college? And where did the opportunities, I guess, lead you afterwards?
I love this question. It's my favorite question. I'm going to tell you why. I don't know how listeners are going to feel about this, but I'm going to shoot it straight because that's how I roll. I actually have very mixed feelings about college. I think that college, so first of all, I didn't go to college. I never went to
Oh,
college and I never dormed and I never did that. I took college courses. There's a few reasons for that. One, at a very young age, I started recording at freshman in high school. What is it, 14, 15? I started recording. I started voice lessons at 11. And then throughout my high school years, I did a lot of touring and performing. And I had my band, and I was already a working musician, but I was also working in doctor's offices, believe it or not, to help pay my bills. And by doing both of those things, I didn't feel like college, especially going away to college, was something else that I um, I didn't want to get distracted. I feel like college is great if you want to be a lawyer, a doctor. If there's like something that you need to go to college, speech pathology, anything that has to do with like medicine or law or anything like that. There's others obviously, but I think for the entertainment world, especially, you talk about all the entertainment and all the entertainment industry, and many of these actors and actresses and performers, most of them didn't even go to college. Albert Einstein didn't go to college. He's not a musician, but a lot of the successful people in the world, especially when it comes to like creativity and art, really didn't go to college. I also was a very adamant, headstrong, I still am, but much more when I was younger, child where, I said, why I don't want to go to college and learn all of these other things. I want to learn what truly makes me happy. I don't want to settle in life. I want to do what I want to grow in the crafts that I know. So although there are colleges that offer great music programs, I didn't want to just focus on one specialized thing. I also felt like I wasn't going to be able to continue touring and performing and recording and doing wedding bands and DJs, et cetera, et cetera. I wasn't going to be able to do those things
yeah.
if I had an additional thing on my plate. I was, working 4 days a week, 10 to 6. And then I was teaching vocal lessons as a hobby at night, plus taking voice lessons and recording till, 11, 12 o'clock at night. My mother was not happy with me about that. And then on the weekends, I would sub for DJs and wedding bands. So I had a pretty full plate when I got out of high school, especially. And I just felt like I needed to be there for my family. My dad had prostate cancer when I was a sophomore in high school. So things kind of, thankfully, by the grace of God, he's great. But things kind of took a change in course of my life after high school. So I didn't feel like college was for me. So what I decided to do, I really love Berklee College of Music,
Hmm.
on top of NYU and Tisch and those specialized schools. And I said, let me see if there's any, programs, certification programs that they're offering. And I took their entrepreneurship program. And I took their vocal styles courses. So on paper, I'm a vocal styles specialist and music business professional, vocal styles specialist.
Yeah.
That's what it is on paper. So I think it was like 12 or 13 courses that I took over a span of like 4 or 5 years at my own time, on my own leisure. In addition to that, I took vocal lessons. I've had about 7 or 8 different teachers in my life. And I still to this day take courses. I just took a Stevie Mackey course. He's a very popular celebrity vocal coach. So I'm constantly learning, and I feel like being able to pick and choose what I want from various places and various sources is what I really spent my time doing. And as a result of me not physically going to college, I spent a lot of time reading books, entrepreneurship courses. I spent a lot of time in Manhattan. I went to the Learning Annex, used to have courses all the time. Unfortunately, they don't do that anymore, but the Learning Annex was really big when I got out of high school, and they would have all these like workshops and stuff that you can attend. I would do performance workshops and songwriting workshops and network with different musicians and go to those events. So by not going to college, I think it allowed me to learn what I chose to learn. And I think it made me a better student as a result of that. And you know, for me, the learning never ends. I'm still a student. I'm going to be a student the rest of my life. I think that's the only way to be a leader, is to be a student. To be a great leader, you have to be a great student. And that's like kind of something that I try to live by. And I try to teach my team that is the learning never ends. You're going to continue to learn for the rest of your life. So, yeah, that's my answer to college. So when my students come in and they say, what should I do about college? I say, well, what do you want to do with your life? That's always my question is, well, what do you want to do with your life? Right. And, the course is different for many people. I don't even think Gaga finished high school. I think she took courses, and I would have to look into that more. But a lot of the times that's the peak of your career, especially as an artist, right? As a musician and an artist, which at the time I wanted to be a pop star. Now it's totally different, but you want to be a pop star. You being in college for that time prevents you from being a pop star. Right. So I guess that's always my question is anytime I get asked that is, well, what do you want to do with your life? How big do you want to dream? How big are your dreams? And then we go from there.
That's an amazing answer, and I totally agree with you. Um, I would even take it one step further and ask, do you think you need college? Because what people don't notice is you're kind of saying it subconsciously is like the 4 years that you could be spending at a college, imagine those 4 years in your performing arts,
Right.
like whatever you're doing, whether you're a dancer, a
Right.
singer-songwriter, a theater kid, or whatever it is, the amount of learning and growth you're going to experience is far greater than any college could have realistically give you. So I totally agree with that. So I want to know now, when did you start the three organizations that you have? And then was there some point where you realized that you wanted to go into that?
Um, so I want to backtrack a little bit because there's actually 4 companies. The 4th one is not launched yet.
Oh,
And then I dabble in a bunch of other things, but let's say that there's 4. ET Studio Productions was the first one. I met my husband. So before I met my husband, I was
yeah,
teaching voice lessons, as I told you, as a hobby,
yeah.
right? That was just something because I've always been fascinated with the voice and performing. And I said, you know what? I like helping people. I want other people to believe in their dreams. I was always like that dreamer that couldn't tell me no. And, no matter what was going on in my life, I'm just like, but you can do it. And I felt like, again, it's probably from the empathic thing, but I felt like anytime I saw someone working a job that they didn't love, it really made me sad, and I watched my parents do that my whole life. And I didn't understand why it was making me sad, but it was making me sad. And anytime I met someone that said, I really want to be a singer, I really want to express myself through voice, whether it's doing it as a hobby, singing at church, singing in wedding bands, whatever it is, that's what made their heart happy. So I started doing it as a hobby. I had a little studio in the Bronx that my father built for me in my basement in my backyard. It was so small, but it was like my little place. And I started doing that after work and doing my own stuff there. And then I met my husband back in 2007 of November. I got hired as a singer. His dad had a DJ company his whole life. The name of the DJ company was called Entertainment Tonight. And there's a reason why I'm telling you that, so hold that thought. And I would sub for many different DJ companies. So I got hired from my now husband's father's DJ company as a substitute singer that night because their singer was out. I drove 2.5 hours. I met him, and him and I started. My husband's name is Joey. He's on our website. He's co-owner of the businesses with me. And him and I started talking, and quickly had a connection, not just on a on a music level, but on a spiritual level and a personal level. And we just said we need to work together. This is like crazy. He told me he was a producer. He graduated from Five Towns College. So he was working at Sony in the city and before they shut down. And he was a working producer and a songwriter as well himself, and a great guitarist. I said, oh, this is cool. I can have my, producer, and like, maybe we'll start dating. And, it was a whole thing. And him and I really hit it off quickly. After that happened, well, that was 2007. I started him and I started like working together. We started dating very quickly. Like after probably a few weeks, we started dating. And he was in Staten Island, I was in the Bronx, and it was just back and forth all the time. And, I had my Vocals by Laura business, and he had his own thing that he was doing on the side, but it wasn't called anything.
Yeah.
And then we decided, you know what? We'd be like really good at doing this together. And I'm noticing now that a lot of the students that I'm helping sing need somewhere to go to record. So let's start something. So we spoke about our story and how we met, and we said, oh, Entertainment Tonight, that stands for ET. But what can ET stand for? What else can ET stand for? And it kind of evolved. And as we started doing this, we said, ooh, ET stands for Emerging Talent. So we obviously didn't want to call it Entertainment Tonight Studio Productions.
Yeah.
So ET is what we say is called Emerging Talent. So we used that. We opened up ET Studio Productions in our apartment. We had no living room. 2 months before we got married, we signed the lease to the space that we're in right now. And since in 2013, and since then we've tripled in size in both team and space. So it was like kind of brainless at that point. It was like, oh, duh, this is what we should be doing. There was nothing else on Staten Island that existed like this. Nothing really anywhere in the area that did artist development and, and vocal coaching. Artist development probably is the key thing that really is not done at many places. And a lot of places focus mostly on predominantly musical theater, which there's nothing against musical theater, but there wasn't really many pop contemporary places to go to that kind of helped guide you in the music business. And I wanted to take all of the mistakes that I've made in my life and continue to make in my life and, help students and young artists realize that they don't have to make the same mistakes that I did, and all the lessons that I learned, and pass it down. So 2013 was ET Studio Productions. And then you asked me another one. What did you ask me? What was the second part of that question? You said the three businesses, right?
Yeah.
The Emergence Music Group, which is TE Music Group, which also is a subsidiary of Emerging Talent. And then we did The Emergence. So we tried to kind of keep that theme there. Just became our production name. And that company, we started to realize that by developing talent, there were certain artists that got to a level of success that they were really ready to kind of go out there and tackle the world of the music industry, whether it be go on tour, write their songs, produce their songs, make records, and really truly do it in a big way, in a professional way, be considered a professional musician. So we wanted to kind of separate the two companies, where ET Studio Productions became like the school, where they kind of learned and they grew. And then the Emergence Music Group was like the production, the team name, where we would get sent artists that were already kind of developed and ready to put their product out there.
Yeah.
So we separated the company that way, and we've had a few artists with that company. Unfortunately, TE Music Group has been sleeping for the past couple of years, and we've been focusing a lot on ET Studio Productions. We don't really do too much with TE Music Group. As of recently, we've kind of just merged them as one at this point. It's there, but it's not really doing much yet. But one day we'll probably merge it again. And then the third company is what was my third company? ET Labs. That's a whole other. ET Labs is a whole other thing. Make a long story short, I've always had a passion for helping children with special needs, and I didn't really quite know how to do that. And we had some parents come in at ET Studio Productions and ask if we taught children with special needs. And my answer was always yes, but I didn't really have teachers that I felt like were the right fit.
To do that.
Yeah, I'm not gonna say qualified, because they definitely are all qualified, but definitely you have to have a passion, you have to have a lot of patience, and you have to also, I think, be truly dedicated to doing that. So for a number of reasons, we opened up another company, Emerging Talent Labs, right? ET Labs. Labs because it's like a place to create and experiment. And we wanted to make it integrative so that we can accept, any child, right? But
Yeah.
also, in addition, accept children with special needs. We wanted to add additional classes. The resources that I have and the people that I've met over the course of my lifetime, and my lifetime hasn't even been that long, but I thank God every day that the people that I've met along the way are really great people. And as I said before, I like to help people live out their passions. So if I see someone that's passionate about art and they love to draw and they love to paint and they're amazing at it, and I'm like, dude, like, come on, you got to do this and make a living from this. And they're like, well, what do I'm like, well, let's figure it out. We're going to see, first of all, can you teach, right? I mean, I go through a rigorous training process. I don't just hire anybody that has a passion, but I kind of go through this process with them and I say, okay, let's figure out what are your passions? What are your goals? What do you feel like what do you feel like your strengths and your weaknesses are? And how do you feel like you can make this be a sustainable living for yourself and love it, right? Will you love this? If you do this, will you love it? And that's always kind of the question that I ask my teachers when I hire them. So ET Labs was in my mind last year. And then in April, we were supposed to launch. And then COVID happened. So that was a big blow because I was really excited about it. And we had a lot of kids interested in coming and starting with us. And then after, during COVID, we did a few virtual lessons. But, we knocked down our entire studio. I don't know if you know this, but like right before COVID, we said we're going to rebrand everything. We're separating the companies. We're doing ET Labs and ET Studio Productions. ET Labs is going to be more of like a hobby, extracurricular activity, community class that teaches many different things in the arts, including yoga, meditation, social skills, etc. I found a great team of teachers that were equipped and passionate about their specific classes. And I knew that I needed extra space for that. So we knocked down all of our walls on both sides and completely rebuilt. COVID happened. We stopped. We didn't even know if we could stay open. It was a very scary time, very scary. And thank God, I really, truly don't know how we did it, but we did it. And we opened up both sides. ET Labs is across the hall from us. ET Studio Productions is on one side. ET Labs is on the other side. And we were able to, to build both spaces, and we have a great team. I think it's 23 or 24 teachers combined on both sides, and team members. So, I feel really, really, really lucky and blessed that I was able to do that. And it's growing, it's going to be a company that's going to, I think, continue to evolve. We haven't even stepped foot, out into the world yet, truly. Yes, we've been doing stuff, but not big enough yet for me.
Wow. Yeah, and I saw the opening of ET Labs that you did. I think probably it's
Yeah,
definitely within
2
the
weeks
last two
ago.
weeks, maybe a week
Yeah,
ago, 2 weeks ago.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um,
It was ET Labs opening and then ET Studio Productions reopening because it was new, it's rebranded, right? We changed the logo, we built new rooms. So it's totally different studio and space now.
yeah, and I saw people there already. Um,
Yeah,
Not
it
to
was great.
say, I'm gonna quote myself and say it's not a lot for now, uh, considering the impact that you want to have and will have. It's not a lot. So I definitely agree with it's only just now starting. Um, and yeah, I'm sure it'll be very successful. So now
Thank
I
you
want
so
to
much.
dive in to artist development. What is that exactly, and how does that look, and why is it important?
Artist development is looking at the artist from a whole perspective, right? So it's kind of having the conversation with the artist and saying, okay, now that we've taken voice lessons, now that we've taken an instrument lesson, whatever it is, right? So it's kind of like that first initial meeting with the artist is talking to them about what their goals are and what their dreams are.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Then we do like kind of an evaluation. Then
Hmm.
they get placed with the teacher that best suits their voice. Then they essentially get through that phase, right? It kind of goes through phases. And then it's time to get to be developed. So now we start talking about marketing, branding, what sounds do you like? What do you want your music to sound like? Who are your inspirations? What's your mission and what is your goal? What type of charities do you want to align with? What movements do you want to align with? And we kind of dig and peel the layers. It's not a one-step process. It takes a long time. And as a human being, as all of us, we're constantly growing, we're constantly developing, we rediscover ourselves every year. So it's a process that continues to evolve. But I think it's teaching the artist what the steps are that need to be taken, and then kind of being there as the mentor and the guide throughout that process. And if I don't know the answer to something, I tap into my resources and find somebody that does. I work as hard as the artist works. So if the artist works, well, I shouldn't say as hard. The artist should always work the hardest, but I will work with the artist as almost as hard as the artist will if they are willing to do the work
Yeah,
and really kind of take those steps. So it's really just like having that conversation, analyzing what their social media looks like, what their brand is like, and kind of just helping lead them and guide them throughout the career. How do they get booked on shows? Where should they start? Where can they find band members? Do they need band members? Do they need tracks made? What are they performing? How are they performing? How do we really make sure that their performances are making a difference? You don't just want to get up the stage and just sing if you've never done it before. Let's figure out how to develop it so that it looks like you've been doing this for years.
I totally agree. So picking back to, you mentioned the question of where to start. So where should people start for those artists, um, in terms of marketing themselves, branding themselves? Um, should they create their social media profiles and do that first? Should they release an album quickly? What do those things look like?
So it depends on the artist. I think that um, you're saying once they kind of get through the first phase of like their lessons and learning
Yeah,
that, what's the
yeah,
first phase of artist development? Yeah, it depends on the artist, but usually what I say is let's secure all the social handles, the domains. Let's get all of those and figure out, do you want your name that you've been born with, or do you want do you want an artist name, right? What's the name that you want to be known as?
yeah.
Fine, we find that, we secure it, we talk about trademarking it, and copywriting songs. But usually the first step, I guess that kind of comes hand in hand with let's start songwriting and going through the list of songs that we've either already written together or that you've written with others and figure out which ones go together. And then we start the recording process. And then usually from there, we start learning how to perform the songs. And then once all that stuff is ready, then you start booking shows. That's usually kind of the last thing. Like, let's get the website done. Let's get the social media done. Let's get the songs done. Let's make sure you have a great song, right? Because you're only as good as your greatest song, in my opinion. I think that a great song is really what's at the end of the day going to tell your story. So, are we writing fabricated music or are we writing real stuff? To me, real always wins. And then the fabricated stuff can come after. I tend to write a lot with artists, like just having a conversation like you and I are, or what have you been through in your life? What's your story? What's bothering you right now? What's making you happy? What's making you sad? And that's not an easy thing for an artist to talk about, for anybody to talk about, really. But once you start getting there, it's amazing because I see them grow. I see them really flourish into the artist that they have the potential to be. And then it's up to them to take it there and continue to take it there.
I totally agree. So, why is it really important, especially now, to narrow in on that story of what makes that person's identity, personality, strengths, whatever it is?
Why is it most important now? I mean, now I think it's just forget, COVID-19, yes, but it's not even just COVID-19. It's just everything. I mean, it's everything. It's an election year. It's, Black Lives Matter. It's sex trafficking. There's so many things that are coming to life now that artists in general are usually sensitive humans, right? We're sensitive, especially if you're a songwriter. And I think that because we're sensitive, we're very connected to everything that happens around us.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that listening to conversations right now and telling the story is so important, because it makes you feel like you're not alone in your thoughts, in your feelings, which is why I go back to what I said before about my real talk posts. You know, my mom's like, "Why did you post that you have anxiety?" And I said, "Well, why not? Why shouldn't I post that I struggle with anxiety? For what? Because of fear, right?" So it goes back to the same thing with artists. Them telling their story, them telling their struggles, them telling their greatest fears, talking about their demons, their greatest joys, their hope, you know, their triumphs, all that stuff gives listeners hope. I mean, I don't know about you, but I, for one, I mean, music has healed me my whole life. I can listen to a Celine Dion record and I'm like, I know, I feel that so much, you know. I can listen to, you know, an old jazz song and I'm like, oh, my soul, it guts me. And music tends to take you to that place. I also think that a lot of us want to feel nostalgic right now. We want to go back to that, you know, that mindset of like what things used to be like. And music is that. I mean, music is nostalgic. That's what it is. I can listen to a Frank Sinatra song and go right back to singing it with my dad when I was a kid. So, you know, it's important to do that, because right now it takes people out of their head and into their heart.
Yeah, and also it brings you back to, I guess, the reason why nostalgia is so good, and any sort of nostalgia, is because it brings you back to a better time, right? Um, because you get to kind of relive in that memory of the song of what happened back then, um,
Correct.
and experience it fully.
Yes. I actually wrote a lot of songs during this quarantine with artists, for myself, a lot of things that I hope to release soon. But yeah, I mean, and it definitely taps into another part of your creative mind for sure.
I totally agree. So this is going to be a bit of a selfish question. So I've always wondered, is it possible for someone who wants to be a songwriter, or I guess maybe not a songwriter, to be like undercover below someone else who sings their songs for them?
So that's called a ghostwriter. So not being like a known writer, a known songwriter, just writing but without having your name on it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's called a ghostwriter. That actually exists.
Oh.
It's very popular in the music industry. That would just be like, hey, I want to write this song. I'm interested in being a songwriter. I want to collaborate in some sessions. I don't really want my name on it, but you know, obviously you would want to get your songwriting royalties and your publishing. So through your performance rights organization, your name would be on there, but you probably wouldn't want to be in like the liner notes or the credits or anything like that. It would just be you kind of doing it, knowing that you did it. It's piecework for yourself, and you know, collect some royalties on the side. So it's definitely possible to do that.
Oh,
Sure.
amazing. Okay, thank you. Um, okay, so next, let's go into marketing and branding work for artists. Um, what are some, I guess, lessons that artists should know in terms of marketing themselves, in terms of what platforms should they be on, how avidly should they post? I guess what's important, is branding yourself and telling your story really important now? What are some of those things?
Yeah, those are great questions. I think that um, as far as how often you should post, that's always, you know, a hard question to answer, because you don't want to do too much to the point where you're annoying the public, but you definitely want to do enough to keep it interesting. So I always say be as honest and quirky as you can, right? Being an artist is partially being a cartoon character, partially being an
Mm,
actor, and partially being yourself. So I think that, you know, when you think of artists like Lady Gaga, for example, um, you know, I performed with her a couple of times and was able to speak to her and have conversations with her. And the person I spoke to is pretty much the person that you see on stage, except exaggerated. So it's an exaggerated version of yourself. So I would say that, if someone, like, for example, you have a very calming voice, you're very soothing, right? I would say make that your thing. That's your thing. You need to be calm, you need to be soothing. You'll be known for that. Maybe you should start looking into things that, whether it be like book narratives, or like, you know, um, I mean, podcasts are great for you. Obviously, you're good at it, but things that would fit what your strengths are, right? So I would say, if someone's like, I have, some young artists that are very, very smart, like beyond their years smart. They know things. I'm like, what? How do you even know this information? And I'm like, well, talk about it. Like, tell your fans. And they're like, but nobody's watching. And I'm like, but there probably is somebody watching. Even if it's one person, that's one person more than you had before. And first of all, you have to maintain the people that are already following you. And second of all, you want to say something that matters and that's true. And you're either going to get hated on or you're going to get loved. The other thing I say is you cannot be afraid to be hated. You can't be afraid that that there may be people that won't love you. Half the world's going to love you, half the world's going to hate you. And that's just the way it's going to go. And the ones that, and I'm putting hate because I don't really like the word hate. It's a strong word, but the ones that hate you are not the ones that are really meant to be in your circle anyway. So put out there whatever feels the best to you.
Mm-hmm.
Find an exaggerated version of it, amplify it. If you like, for example, I like the color pink. I'm wearing pink lipstick. I something, whatever it is, do that. Right? If you love to wear your hair in a ponytail, Ariana Grande's thing for years is hair in a high ponytail, right? So finding that thing that makes you happy and feel good and consistently keep doing it. My biggest advice, though, is to always make sure that it's real. It's real, but it's exaggerated. And sometimes people are like, well, I'm afraid to be who I am, right? I get this a lot. Well, who I am is not really interesting. And it's like, okay, cool. Let's write a story now with you as the character. Let's put Allan in as the character. Who's Allan? Let's write out his character. Let's write a children's book. Who is he? And then that character now, how do we act as that character? And for some reason, it makes a person and an artist feel more comfortable because it's like, oh, well, I'm actually just acting. I'm not really being who I am. Right? And it's kind of like psychology. It's tricking the mind into doing that in order to feel more comfortable. Okay, now let's exaggerate it. What does he like to do for fun? He likes to cook. Okay, cool. We're going to do cooking with Allan while he's singing his favorite song. You know what I mean? Or, hey, I love makeup. You love makeup? Amazing. Do a makeup tutorial video while you're singing or while your song's playing in the background. Find what it is that you're good at and do more of it. That's my answer. I'm sure I could keep going, but I'm giving you that.
I totally agree. Be authentically you, be real, and the rest will come.
That's it.
Amazing. Okay, so so I want to go back to ET Labs. What are some of the workshops that you offer that are different from ET Studio Productions? And then when did you decide to put those? Like you mentioned, yoga is something that doesn't seem to be related to artist development, right? So what are some of those things
you would think, right?
That you included in ET Labs?
And why?
And why?
Yeah. So ET Labs, although there are music classes, it's really not just music. It's really just anything in the world of experimentation. The reason why I added yoga to that is because for me personally, yoga has really helped me calm my mind and help me focus more. So I think that anything that a child or a growing mind can do to help quiet the mind, burn off energy, create in a way that they can be free, I think that all of that combined is the recipe for success in whatever endeavor that they choose in their life. So that's why I chose those classes. We have a meditation class. I said, I love meditation. Meditation's helped me so much in my life. Let's add it because I think you don't learn those things in school. There's not a meditation class in school. You don't get yoga in school. I mean, sometimes you get yoga, but it's not really yoga, right? Yes, you get art class, you do get art class. But it's usually not, a one-on-one or a small group. We do only do small groups, like 3 to 5 kids. And we also, try to pair them within certain age groups, and they're able to kind of ask more one-on-one individualized questions. So that's the purpose of labs, right? And it's like this community classes where they also are able to have fun. They can experiment and try out different classes to see really what makes them happy. Also, not every child knows really what they want, or maybe they do know and they just don't know that they know. So sometimes the parents, like, they like to sing, but they also like to write. And I think that they might want to do dancercise, where they want to like dance and exercise. So I'm going to just try all three, and maybe we'll see which one they like the best. It's like, cool, there's a place now that they can do that and kind of find what their niche is. So that's labs. And then AT Studio Productions is now more of like an audition-based company, where it's like, you want to do this as a profession. There's different tiers. We're going to develop you as an artist. It's strictly music. There's recording, there's songwriting, there's pre-production and post-production, there's music videos, there's all those kind of things. So it's strictly just like audition-based. They come in, they submit their singing video, they get placed with the teacher, and then they kind of go through their phases. The look and the aesthetic of both facilities are completely different. One has more of that like kind of sleek, modern, homey type of vibe. ET Studio Productions, and then ET Labs is like very kind of fun and colorful and open with a lot of space and quotes on the walls and stuff.
Yeah, and justifiably so, because you have two different types of demographics in both those
Right.
areas.
Right.
Very nice. So let's talk a little bit about that. What was the branding behind choosing the elements of those two spaces? Because what I really like, and I really like to ask this question a lot, because I think branding, and I guess branding is just another term, at least to me, to be authentically yourself. You create your own brand.
Right.
Um,
Correct.
so I want to talk a little bit about what are some of those branding elements that you include in both those spaces, and why they're representative, there we go, of the people that you're serving in each.
Yeah. So, I mean, ET Studio Production is, we have our colors, blue, black, and white. I try to keep those colors kind of consistent. I want it to feel, I always say ET fam, right? My ET fam, my ET fam. I want it to feel like a place where it's like home, right? Because we talk about many things that allow artists to be vulnerable. So I think that making it feel like you're just like kind of hanging out in your living room, but also getting a professional service, almost like the way we kind of redid it now is like, one side of ET Studio Productions is like mostly black and white, very kind of open and airy with like glass doors and a lot of sunlight, so that when you walk in, you feel not so dreary and not so dark. Because a lot of studios are very like dark, right? You're dark. It's darkness with like cool mood lights and like kind of hip, and that's the vibe. So we wanted to kind of separate it, where one side was like very open and bright, so you can come in and feel like you're, alive. And then the other side, where it's the recording in the stage room, is more like the homey type of vibe, where we have like more of those, like the neutral colors and the creams, and, and the nice, beautiful couch, and the dark, basically all the windows are closed, and like that studio kind of hip vibe with the mood lighting. So I feel like that really works a lot for artists, because it allows them to kind of like tap into both sides of that brain and walk out and kind of get hit with a different set of inspiration, so that it's not just like this, like, darkness the whole entire time. I know for me, I mean, I would spend nights and nights and hours in the studio, and I'm like, is it daylight outside? Like, what's happening? Is there sun? Is it raining? What's going on? So I felt like it was really important to like kind of keep that brand and that aesthetic for ET Studio Productions. ET Labs, I wanted it to feel like sort of like a dance studio, right? Where you walk into a dance studio in Manhattan, and you can see the bridge there, which is great. There is a tow truck company, unfortunately, there that you see as well, but there is a bridge. So I said, oh, it would be really nice if I could keep these windows open and we could see that bridge, so that when kids they feel like they're not closed in this space. Because it's not a large space. I mean, it's a decent sized space, but it's not really overly large. And sometimes when you have the big windows, and then we have, full length mirrors on the wall, you have the illusion that it's a lot bigger than it actually is. So we wanted that to feel that those colors are green and black, green and black, green and black. Those are my colors, green and black. Um, and I wanted to do the light bulb as a logo. When I actually designed that logo myself, because labs is like experiment. The reason why I thought of labs is because people would say, like, the hip term is like, yeah, I'm in the lab. I'm hanging out in the lab tonight, which is another way of saying I'm in the studio, right? So I said, oh, labs. Maybe we could do the Z because that's like cool and different. And then I can design this cool thing with like a light bulb, like spark your brain, spark your creativity, whatever you want to do, right? It kind of reminds me of like that Albert Einstein thing, where it's like kind of more of those like nerdy, goofy kind of quotes, and, you know, embrace your inner goofiness, your inner weirdness, whatever that is. And we kind of try to keep that theme now throughout the whole entire thing, is no matter how crazy your ideas are, they're not here. They're welcome here. So be as silly and loud and, you know, creative as you want. If you say, hey, do you have a class that offers this? I'm like going to find a way to do it. I'm like, okay, hold on. Just give me like a week. Let me figure it out. And I'm going to make sure it happens. That's what you want? Cool. Let's try to figure it out. So yeah, I mean, again, totally different brands, totally different aesthetics. And, you know, ET Studio Productions logo is more like kind of sleek and professional, and ET Labs is like fun with the light bulb and the colors.
Amazing. Um, okay. So what is the process of, and you mentioned this on your website, with freeing your inner voice? What does that mean exactly, and how do you do that?
Yeah, freeing your inner voice. So I say that, I mostly say that for ET Labs, but you know, it's a term that I use too, is like, what are you afraid to say? That's what freeing your inner voice really means. What are you afraid to say? If fear wasn't a factor, and money wasn't a factor, and negativity wasn't a factor, what do you want to say? And, you know, a lot of times when an artist sings, if they have that, they're very quiet, and they're very airy, and they're not really giving me their voice, right? And I'm like, come on, when you're calling your mom for, you know, a bowl of pasta, or hey ma, can you drive me to my friend's house? I'm sure you're loud, right? What is that? How do we now translate that into music? And we go through, it's just, a lot of it is dialogue, a lot of it is doing vocal warm-ups and vocal exercises, and and showing them that they can do it. You know, a lot of it is psychology, you know, and saying, look, I'm doing it, or look, this is what I used to sound like, right? And it's true, I'm not making anything up, everything I say is always honest. And then just kind of having them evaluate it themselves and say, you know what, you're right, that's not really who I am inside. Let's, you know, and then they kind of get on the same page as you. And it's really me just planting the seed and them leading the ship.
Totally agree with that. So next, let's go into, what does freedom look like? Um, and I'm not sure how to put this correctly, but is freedom an internal thing that we need to develop, or is it something that we can find externally?
I think freedom, um, that's a great question. I think freedom is internally, something to find internally, because I think that if we keep trying to find it outside, you're not going to find it. You know, for me, it's like yesterday, you know, we took a walk by the gazebo, and we looked at the sunset. And like in that moment, and there were three couples, never met them before, just strangers, really, just dancing in the sunlight on the beach. And I was there with my son and my family and my husband, and I'm just looking up at the clouds, and I'm like, you know, it's really not that bad. It's really not that bad. This is, look at them. They're dancing. They have no care in the world. They're saying, okay, I can't go to parties right now, but I'm going to dance here in the gazebo in the sunlight. That's freedom to me. Freedom is when you are able to really let your inhibitions go, not care who's looking at you, and just do it, right? And do the thing that you really want to do, and inspire it on others. So even though I was physically seeing it, you know, I was physically seeing the clouds, I was physically seeing the people dancing, it gave me a feeling of freedom inside, because I felt like, okay, I'm going to just let go in this moment, and I'm going to breathe. I'm going to connect to my breath, and I'm just going to breathe, and I'm going to look, and I'm going to observe. And if you just quiet your mind and you just let it be for a little while, you'll free yourself. It's very hard to do. I struggle with it every day. And I try to find moments when I can, and I remind myself of that, and that's what keeps me going. So it was a great question.
That's a great answer. Yeah, thank you so much for that. Trying to think what else. Okay, I think this is going to be the last point. So, one thing that I saw on the ET Studio Productions page was the concept of performance coaching. So, how does that look like for artists? And then, how do you get to a place where you're performing at a much higher level, which is typically regarded as high performance?
Yeah, so performance thing. That's something that's going to continuously evolve. There are phases. My favorite thing, my absolute favorite thing to do is performance coaching. I love performance coaching. It's part of the artist development phase, but I do a performance workshop that unfortunately, due to COVID and just everything going on with the changes in the construction this past year, I haven't been able to do. But I was doing them 2 to 3 times a year, in small groups of artists after they've already kind of went through their voice lessons. And by the way, voice lessons continues. They don't stop voice lessons. It's just something that, like I said, I still take voice lessons. It just continues forever because it's kind of like your vocal coach and your vocal like mentor throughout the process. But once they kind of get through those phases, then we start talking about performing, and they want to do a gig at their local pub, or they want to do a gig in their, in their local venue in their hometown, or they want to audition for American Idol, X Factor, The Voice, or a record label, right? So I've gotten both. So, I've had artists on American Idol. I had somebody on American Idol this year, Julia Gargano, was top 7 in American Idol. I scouted her, and she was an intern of mine, actually, and I really believed in her talent. So I sent her on the show. And the high level of performance, I guess, would kind of fall into that category where she was on the show and she's like, help me pick my songs, help coach me how to perform them. And we did it virtually the whole entire time, the whole entire season of American Idol, where I helped her choose her songs, help pick the vocal inflections, and perform them. And we did that throughout the whole entire season. Brielle Von Hugel is another artist that I've developed, and she's gone on to tour all over the world, literally all over the world, and
Wow.
preparing artists for that. So depending on what is at stake for the artist and what they're preparing for is how hard I'm going to push. If it's just like, I'm going to perform at my local pub, I just want to get my feet wet and start it, it's like, okay, let's learn how to sing the song. Let's learn some things we can do to make it sound original. And let's learn basic stuff, how to hold a microphone, how to take it on and off of a stand, what these things are called above you, their monitors, what you want to ask for on your microphone, how you want to sound check, how long your sound check should be, things that you have to be aware of when you're doing a show. How loud do you want the drums to be? Do you want in-ear monitors? Do you not want in-ear monitors? How do you want to move? Do you want it to look like it's choreographed? Do you not? Are we singing a slow song or a fast song, right? So it's kind of analyzing what the set is going to look like and preparing them for that. As they evolve and they grow and more opportunities enter their life, then they come back and then we say, okay, now we have to get you ready for this. So, I've helped kids audition for the college of their choice, the television show of their choice, the tour of their choice, like whatever they want to do and whatever opportunities they have, I've helped them get ready for. And again, there's different levels of kind of like what steps we take for each phase.
Amazing. So now I kind of want to dive into on the same topic, with high performance as like a business skill set or a personal skill set, because and you kind of touched on it already with um, with some of those elements of performing comes a level of anxiety that you're going to have to get past, right? And stress and all that. And so I want to talk a little bit about how can people go into that zone where nothing can really stop them, where they can look at their anxiety with, I guess, acceptance, and not let it overrule the results that you're going to have. So let's talk about that.
That's an excellent question. Excellent question. So I get that a lot, and a lot of times when an artist wants to perform, their fear gets the best of them, right? Their anxiety gets the best of them. Because I'm someone that struggled with anxiety my whole life. It's interesting though, because I do want to touch on that for a second.
Yeah.
Although I have anxiety,
Hmm.
for some reason, when it comes to career and music, my anxiety is minimal. Like I don't, I get, I get butterflies. You get more of like excitement, right? But I don't really get anxiety, or I'm not like in a state of panic. It's more of like other life stuff that gets me that way. But a lot of times for people, they just like get on the stage, like, oh, I'm going to forget the lyrics. I'm going to forget how to sing my song. What if nothing comes out of my mouth when I open it, right? And they're afraid. So that's why I believe that it has to go into phases. First is knowing and accepting who you are as a human being and understanding who you are as a human being. Two is not resisting what you're feeling, because what you resist persists. If you're going to resist, if you're going to resist your anxiety and you're going to resist feeling anxious, it's going to continue, and it's going to progressively become worse. That's the second thing I tell artists. The third thing is, how can you use your anxiety to serve you? How can you accept that this is what you're feeling and also understand that others feel the same way? Four is, do you believe truly that your mission is to get your story heard? If you truly believe your mission is to get your story heard, and you focus on getting your story heard, the anxiety is going to start to minimize. The fifth thing is preparedness will help you. Preparedness, when you are prepared, your fears lessen. So preparedness results in success. Really, the more prepared you are, the less anxious you will be. If I get asked to sing somewhere and I'm like, especially if it's a song I've never sang, I get a little anxious, because I'm like, but I don't even know what I sound like singing it. I have to like, I want to like make it fun and do things. Now, am I able to get up and sing? Yes. Do I prefer to practice? Absolutely. I believe in the 10,000 hour rule. I think that you have to do something a lot. The more you do it, the less nervous you're going to get. And the more hours you spend on it, the more you'll be able to kind of adapt. I think it's understanding sound systems and spaces and knowing your space. I always tell an artist when they get on a stage, take like 5 seconds and just like look around you, see what everything is. Oh, okay, the microphone's here, the monitors are here, the sound guy's here, the fans are going to be here. What can I look at? Is there a point that I can look at that when I get nervous? Is there something that I can think about? Is there a place I can go to start minimizing that anxiety? There's a lot of kind of tips, and I mean, I can go on forever, but there's a lot of tips that I give that seem to help. And even for myself, but definitely being prepared for sure will help an artist feel more confident in what they're delivering.
I really like that example with looking at the surroundings, looking at looking at your environment, looking at the people that you're possibly performing in front of, looking at the mic. I think that's a really good example, and a really good practice, because what a lot of people do when they get anxious is they focus in on nothing at all. Actually, they're focusing in on their head and not focusing on those other things,
Right.
which if you're only focused on your mind, like, you're kind of blind to the outside world. And so you're going to
Right.
mess up just from not preparing yourself to go and look at the mic and
Right.
even look at the people that are in the crowd.
Right.
I
Right.
totally agree with that.
Right. 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 And part of the performance coaching that we do is there's like 1 week where I make it really uncomfortable for everybody. And it's like being comfortable with being uncomfortable. And, I'll get in their face and they have to sing like directly in my face. They laugh, they cry, they get nervous, they start to shake. And I'm like, come on, keep going, keep going, keep going. And I'll get somebody else on my team that they don't know that well to get up in their face and have them sing and perform. And it's like you start doing these things and you start to and this is all kind of what I learned throughout my life and my career and doing my performance workshops and stuff, is like, it's not that scary. It's not that scary. People admire you more for actually getting up and being on stage and just standing there than they are for singing. It's just like, wow, like, how are they even standing up there and doing this? The light's on them right now. That's accept that. So yeah.
I totally agree with that. And then the last question is going to be, what does the process of songwriting look like?
The process of songwriting varies. It varies. It can be, you sit in the room with a musician and you tell them, hey, this is what happened to me over the weekend, and I'm mad about it, and I want to write about it, or I'm happy about it, and I want to write about it. And then you kind of say, like, I really like this song from Katy Perry that just came out. I want a vibe like that. And the musician will either play it on the guitar, play it on the piano, or put together, a beat, and then you kind of write to it. Then, for me personally, I like to have, like, my phone is filled with concepts and lyric. I mean, I probably have over 1,000. Just like, I can listen to a conversation of somebody at a bus stop, and I'm like, ooh, that's really good, and I just write it down. And eventually, I just kind of go through my arsenal of titles and lyrics. And if I'm sitting with someone and they're like, here, I'll give you an example, right? So Brielle von Hugel, artist, I also managed her for a few years. We were in a writing session one day, she and I and another gentleman and my husband, and we were just talking about, the conversation was like, I want to write something about like feeling free and feeling comfortable with yourself, but I don't want to do it in a way where it's cheesy. And I was like, I remember I had a lyric in my phone, and the title of it is called Naked. And when people listen to it, they're going to think, naked. This is a promiscuous song. This is something I'm interested in. What is this about? But it's about feeling naked and being vulnerable and stripping yourself of all of your fears and your insecurities. And I had a couple lyrics and a concept in my phone, and the song grew from that. We had Todd, who played piano. He did it beautifully. Another thing that, same artist, Brielle, I told you I can listen to a conversation at a bus stop and write a song about it. So I had a lyric in my phone that I was going to use for my own artist project. And it was, I'm not better, I'm just different. Every conversation is my next lyric. So I had that in my phone. I'm not better, I'm just different. Every conversation is my next lyric. And an entire song was built around that. So I think that it depends on the artist and it depends on the writer, but normally I would say, like, I'll have a conversation with them and I'm like, and I'm just typing while I'm writing. And they're telling me, yeah, and my boyfriend really screwed me over, and he cheated on me, and I'm so pissed off. And I'm like, And what happened? Where were you? What was it, raining out? Okay. Did you have dinner that night? And they're like, what is it? And I'm just, ate a pasta dish with meatballs. Okay, great. I'm writing down the whole thing, and then I'm going through the whole entire thing with them. And then, and then we try to find we try to find a track that fits that vibe. And we'll just find like type beats, and we'll write to these type beats. And then the producer will create a track based on that. And we go from there. So I don't play an instrument, but I hear the instruments in my head. I play chords and stuff here and there, but I tend to write the lyrics and the concept first, and then find music that kind of couples with that, and then sit with the producer. And while they kind of create the track based on that feeling.
Okay. And then the last thing, I'm trying to see where I wrote it. Why do I not have it? Okay, that's actually all that I got. I had one more and I lost it.
Well, that's okay. You
Um,
can always type it or something, and I'm sure I could always do this again if you needed me to.
okay, that's the final question. Thank you so much for this interview, and to all my listeners, um, be involved with what she's doing if you're interested. She has a whole suite of companies designed to train you to develop your inner voice, to expand your creative abilities in whatever discipline you want. Um, Obviously, with ET Labs, you do different yoga, meditative principles, you do storytelling, creative writing, anything within the arts. And then her two other organizations, ET Studio Productions and the Emerging Music Group, where she develops upcoming talent, specifically songwriters. Um, and so, if you're interested in joining in on the journey, where can people find you?
etlabs.com, etlabz.com, and etstudioproductions.com. You can also follow us on social media, ET Studio Prod and ET Labs.
Amazing.
There's also stuff on YouTube too. You can just search on YouTube, Spotify, ET Studio Productions playlist. You can listen to all of our music there.
And all the people that you've impacted, where can we find them? Are they on the websites?
You can find them on, yeah, you can find them on YouTube. You can find them on our social media. We're always shouting out our artists that we work with. So you'll see whoever we tag. And on our Spotify playlist, ET Studio Productions playlist, you'll find that too.
Amazing.
Reach out to us. We'd love to meet you and talk to you. And thank you so much, Allan. This was great.
Yeah, this was an amazing interview. Thank you so
And good
much.
luck to you too.
Thank you.
Take care.